I want to first thank you for inviting me to come talk tonight. It's always an honor and a privilege to be asked to participate in Alcoholics Anonymous. Ultimately, it's a responsibility to give back what was so freely given to me. I want to welcome anybody that's new. You know, if you're trying AA one more time, if perhaps you don't think this will work for you, if you don't want to be here tonight, you know, if you think this is all a big misunderstanding, sorry it's come to this. I mean, I don't mean to be funny, but Alcoholics Anonymous wasn't on my to-do list. You know, I didn't get to AA because I had a bad weekend. I had a couple of bad decades. And for me, like a lot of us, this had to become a matter of life and death. Where I live in Southern California, Los Angeles, they give chips for, 30, 60, 90 days. I think they do that everywhere. And I was one of those perpetual chip takers. I had so many chips and key tags, I couldn't play poker with them. I mean, it was awful. I remember the secretary in one meeting saying, "Give them back." And I recycled through the rooms for 17 years. And I thank God for the unconditional love and the compassion of the old-timers who I remember saying, "Don't even bother taking chips, kid. Just sit in the back, shut up." But they made it very clear to me that the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous would continue to be open. And if and when I was ready to take actions in Alcoholics Anonymous, that AA would be there for me. And as a newcomer, I remember, there was so much guilt and shame about being, new. I doing that walk of shame over and over and over again as a newcomer. And I remember what I would do is I would go into your head and look back at myself and think, what a loser. My goodness, why can't you get this? What's wrong with you? And I know the old-timers were judging me. If you're new, we're judging. We make bets. Right? We're not that spiritual. I mean, think about it. I love it when they say, "Don't judge anybody in AA." You guys hear that around here? What do they tell you 5 minutes later? Stick with the winners. Right? You hear a lot of contradictions in Alcoholics Anonymous that are not necessarily in our basic text, in the literature. I remember getting out of, rehab, and my counselor says to me, he says, "Adam, don't make any major changes in your first year." So I come to AA, get a sponsor. What does he tell me? You got to change everything. Right? I was told don't make any major decisions in my first year. You guys seen the third step? How about don't get in a relationship in your first year? That's a good one. No one knows if that works. No one's ever done it. Maybe in this crowd. But there's a part that we read called "We Are Not Saints." I tell people, if you got a halo, don't let it choke you. But the one I love is God doesn't give us more than we can handle. If that was really true, if I really believed that statement, then I wouldn't need God's help. And the longer I've been sober, the longer I've been separated from alcohol, the more I've come to terms with the fact that I absolutely do need God's help. I need your help. Help is the dirtiest four-letter word in these rooms. It was the hardest thing for me to really relinquish control and ask for help. And my experience with Alcoholics Anonymous is that AA has done for me what I could never do for myself. It's done for many of us here tonight what we could never do for ourselves. Collectively, as a fellowship and as a society, what I could never do. And, the interesting thing about AA, we talk about the steps as being how it works. Really, the traditions are why it works. And for many years in Alcoholics Anonymous, I wanted to change everything about AA. My home group's the Marina Center in Culver City, and, every week we get these new people that come in and they immediately want to change the format and, change the way we run the group, and a couple months later we never see them again. And I wanted to change everything about AA as a newcomer too. And you know what? The longer I've been here, the more I want to keep Alcoholics Anonymous exactly the way it is. You know, the steps stop me from committing suicide. If you haven't noticed, the 12 traditions stop us from committing homicide. Oh, you don't believe it? Get involved in a business meeting. Or a committee. One of us doesn't work the steps, one of us dies, right? If we don't work the 12 traditions, we all die. And again, for me, like a lot of us, when Alcoholics Anonymous really became a matter of life and death for me, then I started to truly respect the thing that was saving my life. You know, you want to see some drama? Get between an alcoholic and a drink. Want to see some drama in my life? Get between me and Alcoholics Anonymous. And, you know, I mean, for me as a newcomer, looking back at it, what I would do is I used to come to meetings drunk. Now, the interesting thing about Alcoholics Anonymous these days is if you see somebody drunk in AA, the first thing people say is, "Oh my gosh, what's he doing here?" Right? I mean, think about it. With the event of treatment, which swoops a lot of us up in our most desperate moments, throws us into yoga class, craft hour, nature walks. What I would do is we have these late night meetings in, Los Angeles, Hollywood, 11:30, 12 at night. And I would go to 7-Eleven, get a big gulp cup, fill it up with liquor, put a little splash of Coca-Cola on top. Then I'd cruise into the late night AA meeting, do some of my best sharing. Looking for friends. And they weren't laughing. And then eventually I started going through treatment centers. And you know what? This is not a plug for treatment. But by the time I finally got sober, I'd gone through treatment 28 times. Not 28 days like the movie. This isn't Hollywood. 28 consecutive times. And I remember telling my sponsor I went through treatment 28 times. I was hoping that would get rid of the guy. Loser. Go find someone that's willing. And he looks me right in the eye and he says, Adam, that doesn't make you an alcoholic. And I thought, you're kidding. He says, no, it means you paid $500,000 for a big book. I wasn't laughing at that either. I didn't think that was funny. The big book's making a big comeback in AA. And I'm not going to start quoting pages tonight out of the big book. But page 101 of the big book says any scheme that attempts to shield the alcoholic from temptation is doomed to failure. See, treatment was a great place to fatten me up for another run, but treatment never solved the problem. And I always thought the problem was alcohol. And a friend of mine, he said, Adam, that little bottle of Jack Daniels you got there, that little shot glass, that little drink, that little 12-pack, he said, if that's your problem, you're probably not an alcoholic. And then in the very next breath, he says to me, and if you are in fact an alcoholic, the type that's described in the doctor's opinion, in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, your problem isn't alcohol. And it took me another decade to understand what he was trying to tell me. Because for me, it was obvious I couldn't live with alcohol. Everyone could see that. From the time I was in junior high school, they call it middle school now. I mean, I'm in 8th grade. I'm already passed out under the bleachers, peeing in my pants, drooling on my desk. My nickname was Space Cadet in 8th grade. I couldn't find homeroom. But see, the greater aspect of this disease for me as an alcoholic is not that I can't live with it, but really that I can't live without it. Not happily and not successfully. And what it really means for me to be an alcoholic is that I have a mind that somehow always takes me back to alcohol. A mind that always leads me back to a drink. I have a mind, a defiant mind, a mind that'll argue with anybody about anything at any time. You tell me it's black, I'll tell you it's white. You tell me it's big, I'll tell you it's small. You tell me to go left, I'll go right with an attitude. And then I'll blame you for eternity. Defiance dogs my every step. You know, that's why we say denial is an acronym. It stands for don't even notice I am lying. Think about it. You can tell an alcoholic, but you can't tell him much. Right? You don't believe it? Try sponsoring somebody. It's my nature. You can lead me into the gates of hell, but you can't push me into heaven. That's why Wilson talks about the tradition of attraction rather than promotion. For me, like many of us as an alcoholic, I had to come to AA on my own terms. I couldn't do it for anybody but me. You know what all the religions and treatment centers have in common? They all send their drunks to us. And I remember it like it was yesterday. That turning point for me when I was in one more treatment center. You know, I was 120 pounds. I was dying of alcoholism. I was broken. I was hopeless. I was dirty. You know, I'd let everybody down one more time. Remember that great feeling in detox? Some of you guys are probably just there. You know, and I'm sitting in the detox circle with my fellow associates. You know, a vision for you. And this woman from AA comes in, you know, on her H&I panel. Now, H&I in Southern California, I don't know if you have a similar committee here, but it stands for Hospitals and Institutions. And it's a committee of Alcoholics Anonymous that brings meetings into prisons and treatment centers and detoxes. So, you know, this woman's on her H&I panel, and she's, you know, talking to us in detox. And she looks us all up and down, and she says, if I could give you all the gift of recovery, I wouldn't do it. And I looked at her and I looked at the guy next to me and I said, what a bitch. And then she said something that would later change my life. She said, the reason I wouldn't give you the gift of recovery is because I wouldn't rob you of the journey. And you know, all of these years later, I understand that that journey to recovery, just like that journey to surrender, that each and every drunk has to walk, is personal. You know, and if you're new, we can't give you that. That intangible gift of desperation. Now, there's an acronym for you. A friend of mine said God stands for grow or die. He wasn't that soft and fluffy with me. You know, and I had to get to that turning point. A place in my life where my head can't get enough and my body can't take any more. And then people like me die. And then I stop drinking and I have a whole nother problem. Because now I got a body that can't process alcohol and I got a mind that can't process reality. And it always takes me back to a drink. So there I am in this place. And, you know, like I said, I know that nobody could give me that gift of desperation. It's almost like alcohol, as the big book says, was the great persuader. I had to have a relationship with booze. I had to get to that place of hopelessness. And, you know, my experience now is that I could write all day long on step one. Until I'd beaten down that liquor store door at 5 in the morning, 5:59, over and over and over again. Or paid the clerk at 7-Eleven after closing $100 for a six-pack. You know, or done a lot of the despicable, diabolical, disgusting things that many of us do on that journey to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. You think writing about it was going to help me see the truth? I had to have a relationship with alcohol. And, you know, if you're new, if you haven't noticed, we're the only people that want a reward because we ran out of a burning building. Think about it.